Bismillahirrahmanirrahim and good day everyone. I, Dr. Sadia Atta, welcome you all on board. In the previous lecture, we discussed about open bite and the various types of open bite, in which we discussed the anterior and the posterior open bite, the incomplete overbite, the bilateral and the unilateral open bite, in which in bilateral we said that the open bite is present on both sides, unilateral where it is present in one side. Then we talked about the localized open bite and the etiology of various open bites, in which the skeletal patterns, the soft tissue patterns were discussed. We talked about the endogenous tongue thrust, the adaptive tongue thrust, in which we said that adaptive is because when there is an anterior open bite present and the tongue comes forward. And then we talked about the endogenous tongue thrust, in which we said that the problem is lying in the tongue itself, which is causing an anterior open bite. Then we talked about various habits, digit sucking habits, and the differences between the endogenous tongue thrust, adaptive thrust, skeletal thrust, and the habits, and the type of open bites they are causing. Then we talked about the localized failure of development, mouth breathing, trauma as causes to and etiology to anterior open bite. Then we talked about the etiology of posterior open bite, in which there was early extraction of first permanent molars, infraoccluded deciduous molars, and the eruption problems, in which there was primary failure of eruption and mechanical failure of eruption, and unilateral condylar hyperplasia. Today we will be discussing the classification of open bite. Among the classification, we divide it as skeletal open bite and dental open bite. Now we'll be discussing the skeletal open bite and dental open bite individually, and the features and the intraoral, extraoral, clinical, all features of skeletal and dental open bite, and how we differentiate between the two. So we'll be starting off with the skeletal pattern. As the name indicates, skeletal, therefore the skeletal component will be involved in this type of anterior open bite. This majorly the skeletal component will be involved. As we can see here, that the patient is having a long face. Therefore, in cases of skeletal open bite, there is a tendency for more vertical. This is vertical, more vertical as compared to the horizontal growth. Therefore, the pattern of skeletal open bite is more vertical, and we can see that there is increased lower facial height, that is taken from the bottom of the nose to the chin. Therefore, majorly the vertical pattern of the patient is increased, in which the lower third of the face is predominantly increased, and we can see either the downward placement of the maxilla itself, because in the lower third two jaws are involved. This is the maxillary jaw, this is the mandibular jaw. This portion is increased. It can be because of either the vertical development of maxillary jaw or the backward rotation of the mandibular jaw. Therefore, when we talk about the skeletal pattern, we say that there is a tendency for more vertical as compared to a horizontal growth. The skeletal component itself is involved, and because of the involvement of the skeletal component, we can see an anterior open bite. So what happens in cases of skeletal pattern is, overall the vertical height of the face is increased, the lower third is increased. It can either be because of the downward positioning of the maxilla or the backward rotation of the mandible. When the lower third is increased, there is increase in the interocclusal distance that can be seen in cases of skeletal pattern. Now, talking about the dental open bite, as the name suggests, the cause here is majorly dental in nature. When we talked about the skeletal open bite, we said that the skeletal component is involved, which is leading towards the creation of an anterior open bite. But when we talk about the skeletal open bite, dental open bite, then we'll say that the dental component is majorly causing the anterior bite. Now, how can a dental component be involved for creating an anterior open bite? Either it can be supra eruption of posterior teeth. By supra eruption, we say when these molars will erupt more, what they will cause is that they will not allow the anterior teeth to meet. So we can see an anterior open bite in cases of supra-eruption of posterior molars, that is excessive eruption of posterior molars. Or a dental open bite can be seen in cases where there is lack of eruption of the anterior teeth. And when can we see or observe the lack of eruption of the anterior teeth? In cases, for example, the patient is having a digit sucking habit or any history of trauma, so there will be lack of eruption of the anterior teeth, which will not cause the overlap, the vertical overlap of the anterior teeth. Therefore, dental open bite can be because of supra-eruption of posterior teeth, which means that either the posterior teeth are supra-erupting or they are more erupted, which is not letting the anterior bite to close, creating an anterior open bite. Or it may be because of the lack of eruption of the anterior teeth itself, which is causing an anterior open bite. And in cases of lack of eruption, the posterior component is not involved. And it may be because composite problems, which means that it may be because of either the supra-eruption of posterior teeth and lack of eruption of anterior teeth, which means that both of these problems are lying simultaneously, that the posterior teeth are also supra-erupted and the anterior teeth are also infra-erupted, which are causing the dental open bite. So till now we have discussed that in the skeletal pattern, the bones, the jaws itself is creating an anterior open bite, whereas in cases of dental open bite, the dentition is the main cause to the open bite. Now here, as we can see in this picture, this patient, the frontal view of this patient, we can see that it is a well-balanced harmonious face. The patient is not having an increased lower third, a well-balanced face. It is not leptoproscopic, means it is not a long face. It is a normal appearing, well-balanced face with the middle third, from the base of the nose to the bottom of the nose, and the lower third, that is from the bottom of the nose to the chin, almost equaling each other, which means a well-balanced, well-proportionate face, and the skeletal component of etiology is not involved in this, which means that this is majorly due to the dental cause, and this type of open bite, that is because of the dental cause, is known as a dental open bite. Now I'll be discussing the clinical features of dental open bite, and then I'll be moving towards the clinical features of skeletal open bite. So how can we differentiate a dental open bite with a skeletal open bite? In cases of dental open bite, there will be absence in both cases, whether it is a skeletal open bite or it's a dental open bite. There will be absence of overlap between the incisors or the teeth. Okay? If it is anterior open bite, then there will be absence of overlap between the incisors. If it is posterior open bite, then there will be absence of overlap between the posterior teeth. So what are the basic clinical features of a dental open bite there will be an absence of vertical overlap. Then it can be because of the infra-eruption of the upper incisors. Because of that, the upper incisors are not erupted properly, they are infra-erupted, so they are leading to anterior open bite. Or it may be because of infra-eruption of the lower incisors. Okay. Either the upper incisors are infra-erupted or the lower incisors are infra-erupted. Or it can be because of the supra-eruption of molars, the upper molars, or because of the supra-eruption of lower molars. So what are the clinical features that we can either observe infra-eruption of the upper incisors, or we can observe infra-eruption of the lower incisors, or both, or we can observe a supra-eruption of molars, maxillary molars, or we can observe a supra-eruption of mandibular molars, or both. What we can see in cases of dental open bite is a reverse curve of Spee. So before defining what a reverse curve of Spee, I like to tell you what a curve of Spee is. In normal occlusion, what we see is there is a curve that runs from the incisal edges to the last standing molars, and it is a normal anatomical feature, occlusal feature of the dentition, which causes sorry, it is a normal anatomical feature of the occlusion which causes a good occlusion and a good bite force, and it is very helpful in cases of mastication. A normal curve of SPE. So a normal curve of SPE is a curve that is running from posteriorly from the anterior plane to the posterior plane, from the incisal edges to the molars, and it is usually straight to slightly curved. And it is taken in two ways. It can either be taken from the incisal edges to the last standing molars, or from the canine to the first molar. So this curve is known as the curve of SPE. So what happens in cases of dental open bite is the curve is reversed. As we can see here, the curve is reversed. It is known as a reverse curve of SPE. So reverse curve of SPE is one of a clinical feature of dental open bite. Now what we'll be seeing on cephalometric radiograph is, as I have seen you a picture of a girl in which the patient was having a well proportionate face. So usually in cases of dental open bite, cephalometric readings for the vertical analysis, which means that the vertical growth of the face, they lie in the normal range, showing that the problem is dental in nature. Whereas when we talk about the skeletal open bite and we talk about the features of skeletal open bite, we see a long face. As we can see here, this is a long face. Particularly the lower third of the face is increased and it is not matching with the middle third. So in cases of skeletal open bite, a long or leptoproscopic face is seen, an increased in lower facial height is seen, and an incompetent lips may be seen because of the increased lower facial height. So if there is increased vertical growth of the maxilla, in those cases we may be observing an increased gingival display as well. And in cases of downward and backward rotation of the jaw, we will be observing a steep mandibular plane angle. This is mandibular plane angle. Therefore in cases of skeletal open bite, we will be observing a steep mandibular plane angle. So till now we have discussed that in cases of dental open bite, the facial height will lie in the norms and the lower third will be matching with the middle third. Whereas in cases of skeletal open bite, the patient will be presenting with a leptoproscopic face, increased lower facial third, incompetent lips, a downward growth of the maxilla which may lead to an increase in gingival display, a backward and downward rotation of the mandible which leads to a steep mandibular plane angle, and incompetent lips, and a long adenoid face. This is the frontal view of the patient and we can see a long adenoid face. Okay, and the increase in angle between the maxilla and the mandible. Here when we are going for the cephalometric analysis in cases with skeletal pattern of anterior open bite, will be the cephalometric analysis will be showing the high vertical proportions, which means that they will be showing greater values for the vertical analysis. So now when we come to differentiate between a skeletal and a dental open bite, we say that the occlusal planes, they usually diverge from first molar anteriorly in cases of skeletal open bite, which means that the severity of open bite will be more number of teeth will be involved, it will be extended distally to the arch, and it will be symmetrical in cases of skeletal open bite. So the planes, they are usually divergent from first molar anteriorly. In cases of skeletal open bite, it will be symmetrical and more number of teeth will be involved. Whereas when we talk about the dental open bite, which is because of the dental causes, usually the occlusal plane they diverge from first premolar and onwards, which means that usually the dental open bites are involving the anterior teeth. As we can see here, this is the occlusal plane. Till here we are having the occlusal contact, and from the premolar anteriorly, the occlusal plane is divergent in cases of dental open bite. So it is not necessary in cases of dental open bite that the dental open bite will be symmetrical, because usually the anterior divergence of the dental open bite is because of any habit or any trauma, and depending upon the nature of the habit and the type of the habit, it may be symmetrical or asymmetrical. Therefore, in cases of skeletal open bites, the planes usually diverge from first molar anteriorly. In cases of dental open bites, the plane usually diverge from first premolar anteriorly, involving the anterior teeth. In cases of skeletal open bite, usually a large number of teeth are involved, whereas in cases of dental open bite, one or two or a segment is involved. Whereas in cases of skeletal open bite, the open bite is usually symmetrical, whereas in cases of dental open bite, it may be symmetrical or it may be asymmetrical. So these are the major differences when we compare the skeletal and the dental open bites. Now coming towards the cephalometric differences in skeletal and the dental open bites, as we can see here, the patient is having a divergent mandibular plane, and the patient is not having a divergent mandibular plane, whereas here we can see that the lower third lies in the normal range. Therefore, in cases of skeletal open bite, cephalometric analysis shows a steep mandibular plane angle, increased in maxilla and mandibular plane angles, which means that there is a greater angle between the maxilla and the mandible, and they are showing a greater lower third of the face as well. So in skeletal cases, cephalometric analysis shows high vertical angles, particularly the maxillomandibular plane angle, and the lower third of the face is increased, and the overall vertical dimensions may be increased. Whereas in cases of dental open bites, as we can see here, the maxillomandibular plane angle usually lies in the normal range, and the problem is just present in the dentition. So till now we have discussed the skeletal open bites and the dental open bites, in which we said that the dental open bites are predominantly because of the dental nature, whereas the skeletal open bite, they are having a skeletal component to it. Then we differentiated between the skeletal and the dental open bites, in which we said that there are both the clinical and the radiographical differences between them. So when we talk about the clinical analysis, we said that usually in cases of skeletal open bite, the plane diverge from first molar anteriorly, and in cases of dental open bites, it is majorly present anterior to the premolars. It is the dental open bites are usually just comprising one or two teeth or few teeth. They may be symmetrical or asymmetrical depending upon the habit or the nature of the anterior open bite, whereas in case of skeletal open bites, the open bite involves a large number of teeth. It is symmetrical in nature. And then when we talked about the radiographical differences, then we said that radiographically skeletal open bite will be showing increased vertical proportions, particularly the maxillomandibular plane angle and a steep mandibular plane angle, whereas in cases of dental open bites, a normal vertical proportion may be seen, and usually the maxillomandibular plane angle is normal. Now we'll be moving towards the management protocols of anterior open bite. Therefore, we broadly classify the management of anterior open bite into three areas. Either we are going to accept the anterior open bite, or we'll be going for the orthodontic correction of the anterior open bite, or the third modality of management is the surgical correction. So now we'll be discussing one by one that when we will be going for the acceptance of anterior open bite, and in which cases the orthodontic correction of anterior open bite will be needed, and which type of orthodontic correction is needed. And similarly, when we'll be going for the surgical correction and which type of surgical correction will be required. So first of all, we'll be discussing the acceptance of anterior open bite, which means that we are giving or providing no treatment and we are accepting the anterior open bite as it is. So there are basically three major scenarios in which we are going to accept the anterior open bite. Number one are the milder cases. By milder cases, which we mean that particularly the anterior open bite is not presenting a problem to the patient, and the problem is very mild in nature, that there is a very mild anterior open bite present, and it is of no concern to the patient, and it is not problematic for the patient as well. In those cases, what we can do is we can accept the anterior open bite. The cases in which there is a very mild anterior open bite and it is not causing any problem to the patient, in those cases it may be accepted. Secondly, when there are more marked malocclusions, when there is a very large amount of malocclusion, that is anterior open bite, and the patient is not motivated towards the surgery, which means, as we can see in this picture, there's a huge gap between the upper and the lower incisors. So there are certain limits to orthodontic correction as well. And beyond those limits, we have to go for the surgical correction for the anterior open bite or any malocclusion. So in cases where there is a severity of malocclusion and the patient is not willing to go for surgery, in those cases, and the patient is having unrealistic expectations that this huge gap should be covered by orthodontics only, in those cases the patient should be counseled that this severity of malocclusion requires a surgery, and if the patient is not willing towards a surgery, then the treatment should not be executed and the severity of the malocclusion should be accepted, because these marked malocclusion can only be handled with the help of surgery. Thirdly, when we talk about the soft tissue, as we already know, we have talked about the soft tissue paradigm, which means that the soft tissue is the major determinant of growth and it is controlling the occlusion in every aspect. Therefore, when we talk about the soft tissue and the soft tissue environment, for example, if the soft tissue environment is not favorable, what will happen is that there will be a relapse. Even after the correction of the malocclusion, there will be a relapse of the malocclusion. So what do we mean by the soft tissue unfavorability? For example, in cases of tongue thrust, if the patient is having an endogenous tongue thrust and we are correcting the dental open bite or the skeletal open bite, the innate problem is there. That means that the tongue that is the cause of that malocclusion, it is still there and it is not being treated. Therefore, there will be chances of relapse in those cases. So, soft tissue or the cases in which there are marked incompetency of the lips. For example, the lips are not competent and we are going for the correction of anterior open bite, so there will be no anterior stopping force to that correction. So what will happen is the relapse. Or in cases where the muscles are dystonic, or for example long face syndrome in which there is muscle weakness, the muscles are not going to hold the mandible and the maxilla together, or in cases of cerebral palsy, for example, any cases in which the soft tissue environment is not favorable and after correction there are high chances of relapse in either ways. So in those cases the anterior open bite may be accepted. Therefore, the cases discussed in the category of acceptance are the mild cases in which they are not creating any problem to the patient and the malocclusion, rest everything is fine and the anterior open bite is not creating any problem to the patient. In those cases, the acceptance of the anterior open bite is a better option. In the cases where the soft tissue environment is not favorable, for example, endogenous tongue thrust, markedly incompetent lips, any problem with the soft tissue, for example, in cases of cerebral palsy where uncontrolled muscular forces are there, or in case of muscle weakness or muscle dystony, in those cases in all these cases the better option lies in the acceptance of the anterior open bite. And then those cases that are markedly severe and the patient is not willing for the surgery, in those cases we are going to accept the anterior open bite. So the second modality, now coming towards the second modality of the treatment and management of anterior open bite? It is the orthodontic correction of the anterior open bite. By orthodontic correction, we mean that somehow orthodontics will be required in the correction of anterior open bite, and usually if the growth and the soft tissue environment are favorable, then the orthodontic correction options are considered. So there are four major options under this category. Number one are the habit breaking appliances, and which are used in cases of any habit. For example, digit sucking habit, pencil habit, or any parafunctional habit which is creating an anterior open bite. Then there are cases where we'll be going for the intrusion of molars, where that will lead to the correction of anterior open bite. Or there are certain cases I'll be discussing in which we are going for the extrusion of incisors, or the multi-loop archwire edgewise technique, that is MEOW technique, in which there are various bends which are given into the arch wire, and orthodontic mechanics are done for the correction of the anterior open bite. So I'll be discussing them one by one. So first of all, we'll be talking about the digit sucking habits. When it comes to the digit sucking habits and the anterior open bite, because of the digit sucking habit, and patient comes to you and you see an anterior open bite, it is establishing because of a digit sucking habit, it should be gently discouraged. The digit sucking habit should be started off with a reward therapy, or a reassurance therapy, in which a patient is given a reward. For example, a patient is asked to say not to suck the digit, and then a patient is given a reward for that. Like majorly they are started off with a reward therapy and a reassurance therapy. But if a patient is willing to leave the appliance, if the patient is willing to leave the habit, then a reminder appliance may be added. It may be helpful. So a removable appliance may be used as a reminder, as we can see here in the picture. I'll be discussing this with you. However, you need to know this that if the patient is deriving any emotional support from their habit, and the patient doesn't want to discontinue with the habit, then the appliance will not help. Then this appliance will not be of use. Therefore, these appliances should only be used in those cases in which the patients, the children, they themselves are willing to leave the appliance. Therefore, these appliances should be added as a reminder appliances, just to remind them not to suck on their digit of the appliance. So this is a very simple appliance. It is also known as a reminder appliance. This just consists of an acrylic and a labial bow and two adams. It is placed on the upper arch, maxillary arch. So what happens is, when this appliance is placed, the patient cannot put the thumb, and when the patient put the thumb or any finger or any digit inside the mouth, it reminds him that he is wearing an appliance and should not do this habit again. So these are just the reminder appliances, which are very simple appliances.